Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm pleased we could connect. I know it's late in Hong Kong, but no, I'm pleased that you're here. We've just gone past 3, so there's a few other people trickling in to join us. And yeah, I guess I'll just kick off by welcoming you and everyone who's watching to the Open Up series with the Bagri Foundation. I'm Chelsea Pettit. I'm the head of arts here, and yeah, we've launched the series a few, 2 months ago now. It felt like a really important time to start talking to artists about what's going on in the world, what's impacting their work, and how they're maintaining their practice through this very unusual period of time. So it's a good chance to hear from Lily Chan today, who is working in Hong Kong, but whose work really spans continents and touches upon all kinds of environmental issues and other important things happening today. So I'll just do a quick bio for those who don't know your work. She was born in 1984 in Hong Kong, but studied in America at the Rhode Island School of Design and the School of Art Institute of Chicago before moving back to Hong Kong, where she's living and working now. Her sculptures reflect the extreme urbanization of Hong Kong and are often made of what's called dumpster detritus or detritus, household ephemera, and mundane objects, which maybe don't have so much value to the individual person, but for Lily holds a great amount of possibility. And she's integrating these objects with some natural industrial elements such as mother of pearl tiles, seashells, artificial plants, greenery, asphalt rocks, other things that we'll delve into in a bit more detail. And the sculptures themselves evoke modernist architecture and anthropomorphic shapes. So, and there's a lot of detail in them, which I think is really fascinating to talk about. So with that being said, the talk should be about 30 minutes, and then we'll open up some questions to everyone else. So let's get started. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
I wondered if you could just kick off telling us a little bit about, you're in your studio now. How do you use the space, and has the way you've used it changed over these past few months since we've all been in lockdown in some form?
Yeah, luckily in Hong Kong, I'm still be able to go to the studio um, on a daily basis. And I mean, right now we're having a third wave, so people are more cautious about it. But yeah, luckily I can still come to the studio and work. I share my studio with another artist. Yeah, so
Quite
I
big.
can see, yeah, I can give you a tour. So you can see some of my sculpture here, and
Yeah.
then on my tool. Um, yeah, and then this is my storage. And
So
now it's
Are
around
those,
10 p.m. in Hong Kong.
are those
And
tools, those really big machines? Are they tools you use?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, those are the tools that I use and collect.
Wow. They look quite industrial. Are they industrial pieces?
Yes, I learned welding from a kind of welding master in Hong Kong. I'm not really good at it, but he gave me all his tool when he retired. So some of the tool are from his father, passed to him and then to me.
Oh, wow. What other industrial tools are you using? So you've learned welding. What else do you have
Yeah,
in?
and I think every project is different. For like more recent projects, I work with some antique objects like ancient ceramic, and I learned some silver jewelry making technique. So from like really like industrial like welding, cutting metal to some more delicate work like silver, soldering silver. I can show you some,
Oh, wow.
if you can see some of the pieces here. I don't know. Sorry. Maybe I show you like
Ah,
this.
yes. Okay, the jewelry design that you learned.
Yeah, yeah. Jewelry is silver. Yeah.
So do you find that with each project you want to learn yourself exactly how to do it? You don't want to outsource to give somebody else, make somebody else make it. You want to make all of it yourself.
Yeah, I think because I think by learning it and doing it myself, I can know the limit of the material, and I can push the limit.
Hmm.
And I think it's the most meaningful part is the process of the making.
Mm. Yeah, could you talk a bit more about the process of the making and the materials? Because as you've said, each project kind of requires different skills. The exhibition you had at Capsule in Shanghai earlier this year, I think it was, had some incredible looking objects and sculptures made of all kinds of different things. I think there's one behind you, or a version of one behind you. Could you talk to us a bit more about where that kind of inspiration to use those materials came
Mhm. I think a lot of my sculpture inspired by one single objects that I encounter in my everyday life. So my process of making a sculpture is I don't usually start. Actually, I've never start with a sketch
from? Hmm.
um, with the sculpture. It just doesn't really work for me, and uh, I spend a lot of time, like walking around the city and then collecting materials and some of the material when I encounter material that really speak to me and bring it to my studio and I spend a lot of time play around with the material by placing it in they say unlearning the material, unlearning what I think I know about the material and the objects. So, and to do that is to place the material in a very unusual positions that I have never thought about and put it upside down, and then completely forget about what this original function is, and then place it with objects that seemingly not related.
Mm.
I think by doing it, I discover, by contrasting with other material. That's why in my work you see a lot of material that kind of quite different, like seems unrelated, like industrial versus like natural materials, and also the ready-made and more like the craft material, and yeah, that's when it come to
Yeah, it's
place.
the craft material versus the kind of manufactured versus whatever
Mm.
you might find on the street, which presumably is also generally manufactured pieces or disposed of manufactured pieces. You've recently said that you're kind of interested in process. I'm sorry, the making of those
Uh,
manufactured materials. So in a way, you're kind of marrying up the original craft piece or the original craft material now all the way to its manufactured. But it sounds like you're interested in going back now to the source. Can you talk a bit about that?
You mean like going back to where the material are made
Yeah, yeah.
with my journey or with
Yeah.
the BMW journey? Okay. So for the BMW art journey, which I haven't started yet, but the art journey is called Tokens from Time.
Yeah,
Um,
congratulations.
yeah. So for this journey, it's called Token from Time. It's about material culture from the past, present, and future. So I'm aiming to go back to some of the oldest ancient craft, workshop that is still active and practicing today, and contrast it with some future material like biotechnology and nanotechnology,
Mhm.
So because in Hong Kong, I always get material from like we are so detached from how material are made in Hong Kong because
Okay.
most of the factory already moved to mainland China.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's like a disconnections, and even so that for this journey, I really want to have a new perspective on material and what does it mean to be a sculptor, and this current moment. And I think with so many things are happening in the world right now, and I want to go back to what is fundamental, what is the most basic and essential, which is things that are around us and the stuff that we make. Um, and I want to learn more about it, and beyond my understanding.
Mhm. Great. Well, hopefully, yeah, the BMW Art Journey Award, which you've won, obviously was your proposal was written at a time when all of these things were possible. So hopefully you can travel and see some of those original production houses and places where things are made that we might otherwise not see as consumers of stuff. So that's really great. Good luck with it. Hopefully that comes off okay. But back to some of the antiques that you mentioned. So
Mhm.
there's the exhibition that you've done called Up Close, I think, which is the antique shops who are hosting some contemporary artists' response to, well, I suppose to antique pieces that you've either found or sort of broken pottery. Can you talk a little bit about that project and where you went with that?
Yeah, actually, I started this project with two creator 2 years ago.
Mhm.
We have this idea of because I have an antique background. My parents are antique dealers, and so before I moved back to Hong Kong, every year when I visit my family, I work in my parents' antique shop and pick up some antique restorations, ancient pottery figures and ceramic. Um, so I think it's really interesting because I wasn't living in I was not living in Hong Kong at that time. So for me, coming back to Hong Kong every year, I see the changes of Hollywood Road, which is really important antique street in Hong Kong that export a lot of the Chinese antique to all over the world.
Okay.
Um, and so we had this idea of doing mixing contemporary art with antique. Um, we also want to encourage people to go into the antique shop because the antique shop actually in Hong Kong, people are usually very intimidated by going into. I think
Okay.
similar to how some people are very intimidated go to contemporary art gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no overlap of the contemporary art circle and then also the antique art circle.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to open for this exhibition. We want to open a dialogue and some exchanges and um, beyond the more conventional exhibitions, that you usually see in a museum.
Yeah. And you added some quite sort of humorous looking additions to these sort of old sculptures. Is that right? I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, I think the yeah we want people to go into the antique shop to discover the contemporary art, the artwork made by artists. So it mixed with the collections with the shop.
Okay. Oh. So the actual antiques themselves, did you find that working with them in a different way than you would if you found something off the street?
Yeah, I think definitely because they're so precious, they have when they're 500 years old to 1,000 years old, it's like, so the antique pieces that I use for this new sculpture are broken antique pieces, so they don't have investment value for the collector. So the
Okay.
broken pieces that I collect from other restorators.
Mhm.
Uh, so
So
I
you,
think it opened up. I think it's less precious, and it give me more room for imaginations.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel
So
like you mentioned something in one of your interviews about giving yourself the freedom to fail while working
mhm.
on sculpture. And I started to think that maybe the objects that you find on the street are because they're worthless or don't have inherent value, that maybe
Yeah.
that's why you feel like you can fail with them or you can want with them in a way. So I felt like working with antiques kind of moved you in a slightly different direction because of the inherent value in something, or the history maybe that's associated with that piece. Are there examples of ways that you've failed with your sculpture, that you've tried to work with something and it just completely failed you?
Yes, I mean I have a pile of failed sculpture in my studio, and
Mhm.
I'm still trying to rescue them. And maybe it will generate itself, make its way into other sculptures. So I have a pile of fresh material. I have a pile of like failed project, and
Do
yeah,
you go
and
back
I think that
from time to time to try and
yes,
see if you can?
yes, yeah. I think so. Like, but usually without any plan. It's just like a spontaneous process.
It sounds like a lot of the way you make sculpture is very instinctual. Is that right?
Distinctual,
Like based on instinct, just feeling your
yes.
way.
I think at the beginning it is. Yeah, I think when I encounter an object, it's intuitive. Whether I see a potential in these objects or not, and I need to be very quick to make a decision whether I want to pick it up or not. Right? But then I learn more and more about the objects throughout the process, and I think it's from the more personal, more intuitive, to more about the people around it, the relationship with the city, and more around much broader.
There was one other thing that I wanted to ask, which was your Art Basel Hong Kong, which is coming up next year, that you're preparing for as well. What are your plans for that? Are you able to talk about them?
Yeah, for this one, the Art Basel that was canceled this year, I supposed to have solo presentations in the discovery sessions with Capsule Shanghai, and we will show, we preserve the project and we will show it next year.
Oh, okay, great. Do you know what you're going to make for that?
Yeah, so it will be sculptural installations with plastic palette.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah, and S4 pieces from tennis court.
And so, can you talk a little bit about, for example, the sculpture behind you? What does that shape represent? Do you know when you're finished, you step back and you think, that's what I was trying to make, and that's what this represents to me? Or do you prefer people just to kind of figure out what they think it is from their own perspective?
Well, this sculpture, when I started, I think you can see there's other metal column in my studio. So this sculpture was inspired by a metal column that I ordered online and then got sent to my studio, and they were too big to fit in the lift. So I did pop it down and then fit in the lift. So by doing it, I thought that can be a potential material. So I had that material metal column in my studio, and I was reading a news about a caterpillar on the New York Times. There's an article talk about how caterpillar can see color with their skin, and there is the image of the caterpillar. They stiff up and to match the shape of the tree branch, and they change the color without seeing with the eyes. And I thought that was such a fascinating image, and I kept thinking about that image. And then I was in the studio one day looking outside a window with all the skyscraper in Hong Kong that I look out, and just make connection about that caterpillar article I read, and then this metal column, and then what I was see outside my studio window. So this sculpture came about.
So it's basically a skyscraper of caterpillars at this point in your head. This is kind of how it came about.
Yes, and then also thinking about the relationship with nature, our relationship with nature.
And that our relationship with nature, I think you quoted in one of your interviews about us making nature adapt to us rather than us adapting to it. And
Yeah.
I, if you could talk a little bit more about, I don't know, I suppose maybe this is one of those probing questions. If there was a turning point in your life that made you think, this is what I want to do, and this is the way I want to express myself. I want to be an artist. I want to raise these questions and these issues, consumption and environment. What was that point in your life where you realized you wanted to do that?
I think after I moved back to Hong Kong, I think you mentioned when you gave an introduction about my work, you talk about Okay, I think we're back. Okay. About the nature and also the industrial material, right? And yeah, I can hear you all right. Okay, we are back. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying when you moved back to Hong Kong.
Yeah, another thing that I noticed is the extreme urbanization of Hong Kong. Can you hear me?
Are you
Okay, I'm
there?
here.
We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, the extreme in the Hong Kong, and in fact, people are very close to nature at the same time, which I find is very unique. You know, like I live in city like in New York and Chicago and in the rural area in the UK, but really what I see in the urban in the city is really really special about Hong Kong, and I think the use of material is natural transitions. You know, it's not a really conscious decision that I want to use this material and I go find these materials. It's just by being living in the city, and I think my choice of materials and my sensibility reflect my environment.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Utah. It cut out a bit, so I'm not sure how much people caught of that, but you lived in quite a, what I suppose we would identify as a rural or smaller place in Utah,
Yeah.
which is very nature driven and very much out in nature. So it's kind of the polar opposite of Hong Kong. Did that sort of inspire your love of nature or your recognition that nature is important and so close to Hong Kong and where you grew up?
I think when I lived in Utah, I was only 17, so it was my first time to live outside of Hong Kong. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think I understand, you know, what it means to be in nature. You know, I didn't understand what to make with, like, what to do with those feelings that I have, you know, or my experience, you know, at that time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think when I was in Utah, I was in a small town, about 2 hour drive from Salt Lake City,
Mm-hmm.
in a small college town. So I remember living there. I felt quite daunting
Mm-hmm.
sometimes because I've never experienced the extreme silence and darkness.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, in Hong Kong, even at night, you can hear noise, you can see light from the outside. So I think that is what people talk about, the feeling of sublime. You know, that
Yeah.
kind of amazed by nature, but at the same time is so kind of daunting. You know, it feels so
Yeah.
small, and then you can just lost in this infinite space. You know, I think that was very surreal and strange feeling for me, and I felt a disconnection with my surrounding.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow. It sounds like quite a formative experience to,
yeah.
um, and shortly after that's when you went to art school, right? So it must have had some influence on you being an artist.
Yes, I think luckily when I was in Utah, because I felt isolated, quite disconnected with the environment. So, and and I happened to be in art classes where the teachers was really committed in teaching. You know, he was already very old, but um, he was painting side by side with me and other students. There was only two other students in the drawing
Oh,
class that
wow.
he was teaching and the painting class. So I got to paint side by side with him, like, uh, and and I think it was the first time that I observe and see what does it mean to be an artist and just to make work and be so passionate about it, you know. And I was
Yeah.
coming from the art education in Hong Kong, you know, it was all about the result, you know. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
training technically perfect to get like a good result in examinations, but that focus on the process of the making is really inspiring. And yeah, and then he told me that I have to apply for art school, and that was something that even I didn't think of at all. And yeah, and I did, and it completely changed my life.
Amazing. Oh, that's such a great story. Well, being American, also British, but I'm glad that America had some positive influence on your life direction. I think what we'll do now is I'll ask a few more probing questions that we've got on our list, which I sent you in advance, so you've had a little bit of time to think about some of them because they're quite hard. For example, if you could go back in time to your teens, and this, of course, we were just talking about this period of your life, is there anything you would change? Is there a different decision you would make if you were to go back in time?
I don't think so. Well, I believe things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't think I want to change anything.
One of the fate, things are what they are, and they meant to be that way. One of those people.
Yeah.
And we already talked about a turning point for you. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I think my work. Yeah, this is my artwork. Because I remember when I was a student in the Art Institute Chicago, to get to the classroom, we can walk past the museum to the classroom in the painting department, especially in the winter. You know, it was such a luxury to have. And I remember walking past all the painting from different history of time, and I mean, I didn't know anything about the artists at that time, you know, and but I felt connected, you know. I feel like I learned something new, you know, every time I see those paintings from different culture, different period of time. So yeah, I think that that's why I was thinking, oh, if someday, you know, maybe, you know, if some people is inspired by my work, you know, that's great, you know. And
nice. And if you could bring back one artist from the past, or maybe philosopher, or we can open it up, who would it be and why?
I think can I have two artists actually? I like yeah, I like that artist. So I want to interview like Eva Hesse.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
I think well I read some of her writing, and I think it was she's such a courageous woman, and she was such a strong will and so talented, and she passed away, I think, when she was 34, really, really young, and she was so talented, and I think underrated, didn't get the recognition that she deserved at her time, but she left this amazing body of work that influenced so many young artists. And
great. And who was the second? Did you say it was a second artist?
Yeah, second artist, Hilma F. Klim.
Oh, yeah.
It's a painter. Yeah, it's a painter. And I think she's the pioneer of abstractions, right? But people didn't recognize her at that time, and I think she's so successful, you know, in terms of connecting the spirituality and painting. And when every time I look at her painting, you know, it still like looks so fresh and contemporary, and I feel like there's a lot of secret message coded in her painting, and I want to talk to her about her painting.
Lovely. Great. And then our last question, which we always end on, is what would you say if your house or studio, but let's say house, was on fire?
My two cats.
Oh, you have two cats. What are their names?
Beanie and Squeaky.
And how long have you had them?
I had them for 4 years.
Oh, very sweet. Very sweet. Well, we'll say hello to, what were their names? Beanie and
Beanie and
Squeaky.
Squeaky.
Beanie and
Beanie and
Squeak.
Squeaky.
And we'll
Yeah.
let you get back to them after your very late night in Hong Kong. Thank you so much again for joining us
Thank you.
and for humoring us with the questions, but also for talking about your work, which hope everyone gets to see in person sooner rather than later. And let's hope that your BMW Art Journey project is able to go ahead. We really look forward to seeing to see where your practice and your interest in materials from beginning to end through the entire production cycle. It'll be really interesting to see how that develops in your work going forward. So thank you again for joining us, Lily, from Hong Kong. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone who's watched and who's joined us. Sorry for a few technical hiccups and a bit of delays, but hopefully we got there in the end. Join us next time for the Open Up series with Sahej Rahal on August 5th. It's our next one. And just to remind everyone, this will be subtitled and sent over onto YouTube and uploaded shortly after broadcast. But for now, we'll have it on IGTV. And yeah, we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Bye-bye.